My Lords, may I begin by echoing the noble Lord Boating in congratulating all of you involved with the authorship of this report, and particularly your chairman. I learnt an immense amount from it, and I've learnt an immense amount listening to you in this debate. We all, at least all of us born in the 20th century, which I think is all of us in this room, I think even Lord Parkinson of Whitley Bay, all of us grew up with stereotypes of Africa. Stereotypes made by aid appeals and bad news stories. We can all think of those images. Flies settling on children with bloated bellies and gun-toting teenagers and so on. Those stereotypes led my near contemporary, the noble Lord Oates, into a great adventure where, with his father's stolen credit card, he landed in Addis Ababa determined to do something about the Ethiopian famine in 1985. And he realised on landing that two things. First of all, that Ethiopia in 1985 didn't particularly need 15-year-old English schoolboys. But second, that the problems were not the cause of, were not caused by Western policy, but were internal. They were caused by bad domestic policy. And we heard from my noble friend Baroness Hellich how, having grown impressively in the meantime, bad policy is again condemning that country. I don't think stereotypes survive first contact. You can't fail to be hit by the industriousness and the hum of enterprise in Africa. If you wanted in figures before the coronavirus hit, Sub-Saharan Africa had been growing at between 5 and 6%. According to the African Development Bank, even this year, despite everything, it's forecast to grow at 3.4%. Now, of course, that's partly just the number of people. We heard from Lord Anderson the numbers laid out in impressive detail. And when I was last in Africa, a lot of politicians were saying, oh, this is a terrible problem, great challenge, how are we going to find jobs for all these young people? And I would say, well, imagine you had the opposite problem. Yeah? Imagine that you were Russia or Greece or somewhere where you had an immense number of retirees and very few people of working age. Then you would have a problem. There is a terrific opportunity in demographic growth. And if, as my noble friend Viscount Eccles says, sometimes it doesn't feed into growth, that is usually, again, caused by bad policy. My noble friend specifically mentioned Nigeria. Nigeria has a 120% tariff on rice, a basic staple. It has crazy banking rules. It has, by the way, I would say a mildly corrupt government that didn't return the favour of the PDP, having accepted the election result last time. It is ultimately in the hands of Nigerians to choose different policies. What drove that growth in Africa? That's the great unreported happy fact of the 21st century. It wasn't aid. It wasn't even remittances. It was, above all, these. And it was the technology that went with them facilitated by investment. And here is a hard truth. The motives of the companies that put in the mobile phones, that allowed farmers to check the weather and see where the seed was cheapest, allowed fishermen to decide where to land their catches, their motives were purely mercenary. They were doing it openly for the profit motive. They weren't pretending to dress it up in humanitarian terms. Now, some people find that an unsettling, even a sordid fact. I don't think that the beneficiaries on the ground see it in those terms. Some people fret that there's a necessary tension between economic growth and environmental protection. We heard it very ably set out by my noble friend Lord Lilly, the choice between electrification affordably or electrification through renewables. But it seems to me that the best thing we can do if we want countries to take environmental protection more seriously is to assist them in reaching a level of economic development where it becomes feasible. My noble friend Viscount Ridley is fond of pointing out that 50 years ago wolves and tigers and lions were all endangered. And now he says wolves have rebounded, tigers have flatlined, and lions are still endangered. Why? Because wolves live in rich countries, tigers live in middle-income countries, and lions live in poor countries. OK, he's slightly oversimplifying. But if we look at the story of our generation, in the years since 1980, there has been a net reforestation of this planet, of an area roughly the size of Alaska. But it has happened overwhelmingly in wealthy countries, particularly in Europe and in North America. Why? Well, for all the most obvious reasons. People in those countries don't rely on slash-and-burn agriculture. They don't rely on wood fires for cooking. They don't have this constant pressure on land. So what can we do to help Africa reach a level of development where those pressures are eased? Well, I think the noble Lord Viscount Waverley had the answer. We can open our markets. You know what? It doesn't even cost us anything. On the contrary, we're doing ourselves a huge favour, right? The reason to have comprehensive trade liberalisation with Africa, including in services, including in visas and professional qualifications, is not some favour to a growing part of the world. It's a favour to ourselves, which also incidentally benefits exporters in that great and rising continent. And yes, there will be moments when, if you like, it's not aesthetically pleasing. The movement of rural populations into workshops in urban areas is not pretty. The 19th century novelist Anthony Trollope once said, "Poverty, to be scenic, should be rural." Right? It's a process that every country goes through. We were first, others are now following, but they do it, let's for heaven's sake, allow them the dignity of agency. They do it because they are making rational choices about how to secure the best living standards. And what can we do to help? We can ensure that they have the right to buy and sell without restrictions. And here again, like Lord Lilly, I'm delighted to be able to agree with the noble Lord Hannay. We could be doing way more. It's true that a lot of sub-Saharan African countries already qualified for what they call EBA, which is almost effectively a tariff-free deal. But as the wags in Africa will tell you, it's not so much everything but arms as everything but farms. There are all sorts of ways in which agrarian produce is excluded. I met the Ugandan vanilla producers, and they said, in theory, we're allowed to sell all the vanilla we want to the European Union. There's no tariff. In practice, the standards are set by two French lobbyists who have substantial interests in Madagascar in such a way as to exclude everyone else's vanilla. Now, if Britain, pursuing an independent global trade policy, is serious about global engagement, we have to identify and remove those tariff and non-tariff barriers. To repeat, not as a favour to Africa, but as a favour to ourselves. Let's apply the lesson learned by the noble Lord Oates, age 15. It's not always about us. We're a naturally solipsistic species. It's human nature to put ourselves at the centre of the universe. But the rise of Africa is a demographic fact. It's going to be an economic and a geopolitical fact. And the challenge for us is to stop thinking of it as an obligation and start embracing it as an opportunity.